There's a DNA match between the torso found in the woods and the missing soldier. It's 22-year-old National Guardsman Norman McCaster.
Just received that phone call. It just tears you. It just tears you apart. That, to hear that one of your kids is dead.
What did you hear had happened at that time?
Nobody wanted to tell me. People just said, don't say anything to him.
But when Norman's father arrives at the police station in Springfield, the detectives regretfully reveal the savage way Norman died.
Once I found out all the details, I pretty much wanted to hurt something or someone.
Whoever was responsible.
Who's ever responsible for it.
And investigators believe they know who is responsible for Norman's death. His own wife, Watasha. They've had her under surveillance for weeks.
We wanted to gather the strongest case we could get against her.
Now, armed with what appears to be undeniable evidence against her, Detective Vos asks Watasha to come down to the sheriff's headquarters.
The Thanksgiving holiday was coming up. We thought she might go home and not come back.
Watasha agrees to meet with investigators.
We were helping the guard out on a missing person who, according to them, is a missing person, Norman. That's why we came to talk to you. And we briefly spoke at your house, and you were nice enough to come over here with us, right?
Detectives ask Watasha about her relationship with her husband. She paints a picture of estrangement and abuse, starting with an argument over Norman watching porn.
It just threw me into the wall, and I got so nervous because, that's my husband,
Right.
And he never put his hands on me like that.
How long ago was that?
That was about maybe 2 months ago.
Then detectives recall something odd they noticed at her house during their initial conversation with the young woman. And now it's starting to make sense.
There was a calendar on the wall in the kitchen with the anniversary date all blacked out. Their 2-year anniversary was coming up, and Norman McCaster was not going to make that 2-year anniversary, and she was going to make sure of it.
So Detective Vos asks a leading question.
Hey, you said your anniversary was Monday. I can't remember when you said it was.
It was on the 6th. It would have made 2 years we've been married. And I kicked him out on the 24th. He actually took all his stuff on the 24th.
All of his stuff? Remember, cops already went through Watasha's trash. They found what appeared to be Norman's belongings, including his military uniforms, credit cards, and IDs.
And when he left, what did he take?
Everything.
Everything?
Detective Vos has just caught Watasha in a lie.
You told us at your house that he left with nothing but the clothes on his back.
He got everything.
Did he?
Yeah. I didn't keep anything. I don't want to keep anything.
Well, you know why you didn't? You threw it all out in your garbage. That's why we're here. We know where Norman's at.
Where is he?
You know where Norman's at.
No, I don't.
Detective Vos hands her 2 search warrants, one for her home and one for a sample of her DNA.
If we haven't made ourselves clear, this is a homicide, okay?
What's a homicide?
Watasha might not know what a homicide is, but cops believe she committed one and place her under arrest.
Oh yeah, well, under arrest or something?
Yeah.
I'm under arrest.
Yep. You're under arrest for the concealment of a homicide. There's nothing more. What I'd like to do is get this straightened out, okay?
I want a lawyer.
Pardon me?
I want a lawyer.
You want a lawyer? Okay.
Watasha is taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder, dismembering a body, concealing a homicidal death, and obstructing justice. At trial, prosecutors reveal the results of a forensic computer search performed on her laptop.
The computer searches, they all started around the beginning of June. about how to kill your husband, how to kill a spouse and get away with it, and the list goes on and on.
And on to these curious clicks of her computer keyboard,
How to kill somebody with Visine.
which, according to prosecutors, would explain the puzzling contents of one of Watasha's trash bags.
We found numerous bottles of Visine. I've been involved in law enforcement for over 20 years. At the time, we didn't even know what relevance that was. But we found out, people take the component of Visine and ingest that in the human body in large quantities, it can be fatal.
A forensic toxicologist testifies that he discovered above normal levels of tetrahydrozoline, an ingredient in Visine, in Norman McCaster's liver. But prosecutors are just getting started when they call their star witness a student who attended college with Watasha.
He loaned a gun to Watasha. She then returned a day later, and it was missing 2 bullets. We believe that she shot Norman in the head with that gun. That's why his head was cut off with a reciprocating saw, and then his hands were cut off and his legs cut off. Either she thought that no fingerprints could be found, so they couldn't determine who, when the torso was found, who it was, or it made it easier because Norman weighed over 200 pounds. Easier for her to move Norman.
But cops believe she still had to use a dolly. That theory comes from more damning surveillance footage. This time, it's from an entirely different store where Watasha is seen purchasing a dolly, then placing a truly chilling order.
A chest freezer that was later canceled. We surmise that she was able to dispose of the body, so she did not need to store it in a chest freezer.
But what about the rest of Norman?
We believed that the killer went up to Chicago based on some evidence from her phone. We looked, and there were several bridges, other areas, other wooded areas.
So no one knows where his head, his legs, his arms are?
His head, his hands, his legs were never recovered.
It's a devastating reality for Norman's family members who were hoping to lay their loved one to rest in one piece.
Why would someone just do something like that to a person, period, kill a person up like that?
After 7 hours of jury deliberations, Watasha is found guilty and sentenced to 78 years.
That's not a human being to me. That's a monster.
And the motive for murder?
Watasha was a perfectionist. She had never failed at one thing. But her marriage was crumbling around her, and when it started to fail, she came up with a plan, and unfortunately she carried it out.
Since the horrific murder of Norman McCaster, his father tries to stay strong for the rest of the family by mourning his only son in private.
It's tough because every morning I go out to the car, I'll sit there and, I'll cry because that's how much I miss him. It meant a lot to me.
To this day, the Springfield, Illinois woman has never admitted to killing, then dismembering and decapitating her husband. In fact, even while being arrested, Watasha was still wearing her wedding ring and told detectives she was holding out hope that she and Norman would get back together.
I'm Chris Hansen. If you like this story, make sure you tune in every day to Crime Watch Daily. You can find where the show airs in your city at crimewatchdaily.com. Watch it live or record it on your DVR and watch it at night. And to all those criminals out there, remember, we are watching.